am here with the multi-hyphenate, as I call it, Huma Qureshi. She's a compelling actress. You have seen her in movies like Gangs of Wasseypur, Badlapur, Maharani web series. She's also a producer, and today she has yet another feather to your cap, which is kind of filled with like lots and lots of like ornate stuff. You are now an author, and if you haven't picked up her book, Zeba or Zeba as we call it, she says it's like potatoes or potatoes. Doesn't matter what you call it. It's about a female superhero. So perhaps we can dwell into the book. Firstly, tell us, like, can women have it all, Huma? Clearly, you seem to be the portrait of having it all.
It's very nice to know that I have some legitimacy as an author as well, and not just an actor. So that's a good feeling. I was just telling her, we were chatting before we'd come in, that, you know, writing now is my side business, like my side hustle.
What I loved about this book, just to give you guys a heads up, it's a female superhero who's actually tired of saving the world. She's flawed, she's fabulous, and this is what I love. She's like caped crusader, but she does it with such reluctance. And I think that's what makes this book so compelling. Is that,
Thank
do you
you.
think that's why?
I don't know, yeah. I think, you know, we have an idea of what a superhero or a superheroine should look like, sound like, be like. I've always loved the idea of imperfect people doing heroic things. I wanted to have a female character in her 30s, flawed, vulnerable, not so well put together, doesn't know what direction. There are a lot of people, I think, who identify with it, because at least when I was in my teens, I used to think, you know, 30-year-olds are very like smart. They've got it figured out. And then you reach there and you're like, not really. There's still so much left to do. So that was the idea. And I love the fact that, you know, she wears her vulnerability and her confusion on her sleeve. And yet she still manages to do some great heroic things, but with a lot of like unsurety and uncertainty, because, you know, you don't know you're going to hit the bullseye till you hit the bullseye.
I was just saying it's so interesting that you say you wanted a flawed heroine, perhaps, because most books, movies, etc., have a very idealized version of what a woman should be. But in your case, it's a departure of sorts. You want to stray away from the narrative. Was that very deliberate on your part?
I think so. I like the idea of portraying women in all their glory, which doesn't mean that they have to be perfect all the time, but they have to be real, like living, breathing, three-dimensional creatures. For male characters, we have that range somehow, but not so much for women. You know, either they're put on a pedestal, or they're supposed to be this vamp or this victim. And I feel, no, there are many shades between that, and it'll be nice to have that kind of nuance of writing in popular culture. That was the genesis of the idea, and Zeba is all of these things and more.
What I love about it is she's rich and privileged. She has rich people, posh people problems, yet she's not apologetic about it, which I thought was so interesting. There are many, many authors, when they talk about, let's say, Confessions of a Shopaholic, etc., there's a lot of like narrative on why is she rich, is she guilty about it. In this case, she just owns it.
I don't know. I think that part of it was, I think I didn't grow up as a rich kid. So that was the fantasy part of it.
I always thought you were rich.
No, we were a good middle-class family, and I think my father and mother worked very hard to give us everything. When I was till my 6th standard, we lived in a one-bedroom house, and then we moved to like a really nicer house in a better locality. So I think we've seen both sides of it, and now, of course, I'm an actress and I travel the world. So now I'm living the dream, as they say, touch wood. So I always wondered, like, you know, why should people be apologetic or sad about anything? If you're born somewhere, you're born there. You know, that there's no need to feel like bad or guilty about it.
You need to tell me as well, there's a portion in the book that says most of the female stories are written by from the male gaze, through their prism. So was that liberating for you to write, to put your thoughts into paper, have a protagonist who's really like who you want women to be represented?
I think so. You know, I think sometimes and it happens with me a lot because I'm an actor, and sometimes, you know, I'm doing these female-centric parts, but most of them are written by people who don't really understand the female experience. Because again, like, you're trying to distance it. You're trying to either glorify it or try and like really like victimize it. And I feel, no, I think it's somewhere in the middle. So the portion that you're talking about in the book, of course, is complete fantasy. and it takes place, in this area, which has now become sort of like a underground station for revolution almost, for women, by women, right under this evil dictator's nose.
That's true. What was the biggest challenge, Huma, in writing this book? Is it like, because writing requires a lot of discipline. In your case, are you disciplined in general? Like, generally, I remember I talk to actors and they say that they have attention deficit, they're not able to sit in one place. How did you channel all that and, gain that kind of discipline to
I think
write?
my mind is always working, and I'm always trying to like do multiple things at the same time. So there's that situation is there. But I think so. This book I started writing during COVID, so that gave me a lot of time. I wanted to write this actually for film or television. This was originally, I think lends itself very beautifully as a film or a series. And I had all this time during COVID, so I wondered, like, should I write this into a script? But I thought that was too cliche, too expected. So I told you, I tried to jam with a couple of like, comic book creators and be like, should we jam together, make this into a comic book? But that would mean during COVID, do the whole Zoom, long distance conversation, and then it is not just your idea alone. Then it takes another form. So I thought I should do the cooler thing and write a book.
Right. So when do you start writing? Because writing is very frustrating, right? Did you go through many drafts? It's not like, I don't know, is it very different from acting? I know they both are like creative portals, but how different is it?
I mean, my style of writing, I call it, if I have to put it like in a cool way, I just say it's like this free-flowing, morning pages, style where I'm just sort of lucid writing. It makes it sound very intelligent. The other word for it is vomit writing. Just you vomit out everything on a piece of paper and then you be like, does it make any sense? Because sometimes I feel like, and I know a lot of people who I think would make far better writers than me, but I think sometimes it's also about being brave and just doing it and then worrying about, is it any good or not? Because often I think our own feelings of being like, am I good enough, stop us from taking that leap. So I think in this case, I just took the leap. And during COVID, I would just wake up in the morning, do my little morning pages, do a little workout, exercise, stretch, whatever, and then just sit down to write. And I would just like pour it all out, and then the next day go back and be like, hey, is it making any sense? And do I need to rework the previous chapter or something? So it kind of happened like that. I don't know if it's a great way to write, but that was the process that I followed.
Clearly, you have a book in your hand, so it has worked.
I mean, something works.
No, I love it. Did it make you feel very vulnerable as well? Because I remember it's also a part of you, right? Many a times while I was reading this book, I was wondering whether, is this Huma speaking or is this Zeba? I had such like flashes because I've interviewed you in the past for several movies. It's like you are speaking to me and it felt very intimate and personal.
So the style of the book, for those of you who have not read the book, is so each chapter is a different character taking the story forward. The entire book is in first person. So if one chapter is Zeba talking, the other chapter is her mother or her father or the villain, and they all are in first person. And then, of course, the narrator voice takes over. So it's very fluid in that sense. They all are me, and they all are not me. But yes, the way I talk candidly, I feel when you think at least as characters, even if you're the bad guy or the villain, you won't judge yourself. No villain thinks he's the bad guy, right? They all have reasons for justification. So I think the tone of the book, hence, is your own thoughts. And there's no filter to it.
Right, of course. And like you said, every superhero movie or a book is as good as its supervillain, right? Look at Joker, for instance. Joaquin Phoenix, brilliant in it, right? We want to know his backstory. Even with this, the great Khan, the dictator, the tyrant, how much of it did you really want him to humanize him? You did, right? At the end of the day, somewhere at the end of the book, you're like, he's bad for a reason, he's evil for a reason. You reach a certain kind of understanding. He begins off as a very bad guy, and then later you kind of humanize him.
And not that I was trying to like justify any of his actions, but there's a reason for it. And sometimes if you just understand the reason, you understand the root of the problem is not the person, but the situation. The great Khan, as we call him in the book, is one of my most favorite characters to write for, because everything he stands for, I hate. Like, he's just a bad person. Like, he thinks murder is just so easy and killing people is just such a fun thing to do. Like, he jokes about like killing his chef because he suspects he's a spy, and before he kills him, he gets him to prepare like a last meal, and he compliments him for the eel sushi or whatever he makes, and I'm just like, that's just a horrible thing, but makes for like, I get great reading or
and
great cinema.
riveting read. Do you think you love going into dark spaces as a writer?
I love going into real spaces with a bit of flair. Let's put it like that. I feel like I don't like to go into morose spaces or like dark spaces where you feel like really repulsed. But no, you touch upon. I think the book touches upon a lot of grown-up themes, political themes, adult themes, but from a very like 360 wholesome perspective. It doesn't try to take a side, but it talks about basic humanity, it talks about what it means to be this superhero in today's day and age. It talks about the past and the future and the present, but without taking a side or saying, oh, what is better? You know, it is neither trapped in nostalgia, nor is it saying, oh, only the future is great. But it kind of tries to say, okay, we're here because there's continuity, right? The tradition is also important. Who we are today is also important. Our feelings, which maybe not so great or not so correct, they're also human. We all feel these things, right? Of course, we check ourselves and we correct ourselves but it's natural. Everyone goes through this, right? And that kashmakash, that fight between the good and bad inside you constantly, even with the protagonist, because the protagonist is not a perfect protagonist. She's flawed.
She is.
And many people will be like, oh, she's a bad person. But then you see her transformation and her journey to someone perhaps likable, or if not likable, someone who ends up doing good things.
What I loved about the book is also the immigrant experience that you talk about. Like Sharjah, if you look at it, there are many people who come from different parts of the world. They live here, they make a living. The kids that come out of it, they are often confused. Zeba as well is like, she lives in New York, but then I think her roots are in her native land. So that dichotomy was so interesting. So did you have a similar personal experience?
I'm no, unfortunately, or fortunately, no. I've my whole life till I moved to Mumbai was in a 5 kilometer radius in Delhi. I grew up there, went to school there, went to college there, and then once I moved to Mumbai, my world just kind of exploded. And now, I mean, yeah, Mumbai is home, but like I go everywhere. Like I'm traveling at least 7 months in a year, which is a lot, like either for work or shoots or holidays or whatever. But I feel the immigrant experience is so important because what is home? You know, is home where your parents come from? Because my mom is from Kashmir. So when I go to Kashmir, and that's my Nanihal, so then I'm like, oh, that's also home. My dad was born in Nizamuddin. I grew up in GK. And when you go, and I don't know how many of you are familiar with when I'm taking these names, they're very different spaces, very different ways of living. Like I would go to school and we would be this in cool South Delhi school with like listening to Backstreet Boys and, you know, 90s Rahman, and that was a jam. And then when you go to Kashmir, it's a different world. When you go to Nizamuddin, it's a different world, and you had to, you know, be more proper because your grandparents were there, and you had to, you had to be like a bit more well-behaved. So as a young kid, you learn to navigate all these spaces because you can't be an outsider anywhere. And they all are your realities, and they all are lovely, and they all must be embraced because you don't want to feel, you don't want your grandmom not to like you. You know, that's also important. You love the fact that she makes your favorite kheer for you. You know, so those
Right.
things.
There's one statement or a sentence in the book that really had my heart. It says you're a 30-year-old whose inner child is yet to be healed. That really spoke to me, Huma. I think you're talking to several women. You know what? Your inner child could never be. You're always a work in progress. Yeah. Do you think as an actor you brought that kind of experience? Because you have made it in Bollywood through your own grit, your choices. Movie choices are so different from the conventional song and dance cameos, etc. So did you bring that a lot to the book as well? You wanted this heroine to be reflective of who you are as an actor as well.
I don't know if that was a conscious choice or just seeped in. I feel like we all have an inner child that's not healed. You know, we all are products of our backgrounds, our families, and there's no like right or wrong or black or white. It's just how we are, the messiness of human relationships, the messiness of what it is to be a woman, a man, a parent, a child. You know, these things are not so clear. You know, for example, a lot of working women, they do feel guilty about like leaving the child behind, but they also have to be, they have to do things for themselves, and they also have, and I feel they're better role models because they're working, and the kids also see the fact that they have women, you know, who have agency. Exactly. As a role model in their family. With Zeba, like, sure, she's privileged and she's rich, but she's also directionless, you know, and at the same time, her inner child is not healed because, I mean, for those of you not read the book, she was abandoned as a child, and then she was adopted perchance by this really affluent family, and within 72 hours of her abandonment and going to New York, suddenly now she's in the lap of luxury. So was it fate? Was it destiny? Was it predestined? We don't know. And then, of course, so she, of course, is born in the lap of luxury, but for her, the biggest thing is, why would you abandon a child? You know, and that angst she always grew up with.
And this is also a superhero who says it's okay to have therapy, which I thought brings the conversation about mental health to the fore. Was that deliberate on your part as well?
100%. Superheroes definitely need therapy. Think of all the like killing and shooting and saving the world and putting yourselves in like danger. PTSD is a real situation, guys.
That's
Come
an
on.
occupational hazard.
It's a full-time occupational hazard, and they also need all the help and care. Yeah? Some TLC superheroes need.
When celebrities write, especially Bollywood actresses, or let's say when Twinkle Khanna wrote a book, the first thing among our newsroom was, did she write it or did somebody else ghostwrite it for her? It's a very valid question, and it's not diminishing what she has done. And later we spoke to her, we realized she has a great voice, a great sense of humor. In your case as well, were you aware that you would be asked that question? Like, how much of it is Huma Qureshi's words, or did somebody really help
But
you
you just
along?
said that yourself. Nobody else can write this but me. In fact, I was just telling her before, on the eve before this book was supposed to come out, I got this massive panic attack. Because I'm like, you know, earlier as an actor, if you do a bad job or something, you can hide behind saying, oh, director's fault, or the writer just wrote a bad scene, what can I do? They shot me poorly. Now I'm like, now they know how I think. Like, you know how vulnerable that makes you feel when people can hear your inner voice and you're just like, I don't know if that's a good thing. What will my mom think about me? What will my teacher think about me? Oh God, like.
I think your mom would be extremely proud. That much I can.
She is,
must
she
be.
is.
Has she read the book?
She has read the book, and you know, it's interesting like how different people take away different things. And for her, the book was about how your belief can transform you. You know, for somebody else, like when you saw it as like this very like modern book, which talks about the past, present, and future, and tradition and modernity in a very real way and in a popular culture way. But she spoke about, because she's a woman of belief, she's like, hey, you know, when even if you don't start off as the right person, belief can really transform you. And I was like, nice, I like it.
You said writing is a side hustle. Do you think at any point it's going to be a lot more? Would you even direct a series? Like if this were to be made into a series, which I think she drops broad hints in the book. She's like, guys, make sure my costume looks really good. The black is the right shade of black and it's slick. So I think you're manifesting already. I think it's already in the works. Something tells me it's already in the works.
I don't know if it's in the works or not. Maybe it's in the work in the cosmos. I don't know, but I'm putting it out there. I actually wrote this as a 10-pager first, as a television pitch. And I did send it to people, and they were like, oh, it needs a lot of money to be mounted because it's fantasy fiction. And then I wrote the book, because I'm like, having an IP is damn cooler than writing a script. Always. But no, I definitely would love for it to be a film or a series. That's the plan. I don't know how or when. I know if I'll direct. Would I like to direct? I think at some point I will direct. I just have to find the right co-actors who will be happy with having me direct and act with them.
I think that
go the Bradley Cooper way.
Of course, you need to tell me, like, in terms of writing, acting, etc. What are you most comfortable in, Huma?
Acting is my is what makes me happy. Being on a film set, I feel most alive. When they say, when will you retire? I'm like, you know what? Even I'm 90, I don't want to be acting. I would want to be directing. I would want to be producing. I want to be doing something with the movie business. I find the whole idea of creating something, and when it is, you know, put out there, just people you never meet or will never ever meet can get touched by your body of work. You know, something you've created. I find that so beautiful. Like when I come, like I just came here and I met so many people, and for the first time, and I probably meet them only once, and they took a picture or they shook my hand and they were like, we were waiting for you. Or I just meet a random person and they, you know, sometimes I get very taken aback. They're like, Huma, how are you? And I'm like, do I know this person? And then I realize, no, it's just a fan who's just excited to see me. But the fact that someone loves you like that, it's so beautiful, you know, and that's the power of the medium that I work in. That people see a Maharani and they be like, you know, it really like, or they see a double XL and be like, it really changed my life, it inspired me, or I can also do it. I love that. I love that power that my profession gives me.
I love that. And you also did a very bold move when it came to writing this book. In the climax, she leaves it open-ended, where the violent scenes, she says she's not interested in writing it. She wants the readers to perhaps decide
Imagine
what
the violence.
Yes.
See, we all have a different threshold for violence, okay? I did a film called Gangs of Wasseypur.
I was like, for a lady who was in Gangs of Wasseypur, taking such a vanilla stand, it's such a cop-out. Do you think it's a cop-out?
It's not a cop-out at all. I just feel like, whenever it becomes a film, we'll let very able directors and action directors create the magic of action. I feel like it was not needed.
Deepa Mehta is interestingly involved in your journey. Can you tell me, like, how did she prompt you? She discovered the writer in you.
She's been a great friend, director, ally, mother. I don't know what to call her. She actually read the first 10 pages I wrote, and she's like, "You can write. Just do it. Don't think about anything." And she read one of the earlier drafts and sent me some of her feedback and notes, and I absolutely love her. She's really empowered me as a writer, as an actor, as a person.
What did you think of the reviews that have come through, Zeba? Did you read every one of them? And is it like a movie releasing as well, where you look at the star rating and go like, oh my God, my validation comes from the reviews as well?
I mean, I'm an actor by profession, guys. Of course, I read all the reviews. And they've been very kind. I think maybe it's my first book, so they've been nicer to me. We'll know by the next one. Huh?
That's
What
correct.
they really think.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Huma,
you so
for your
much.
time.
You were lovely. Thank you.
So are
Thank
you.
you.
As
Thank you.
always.
Thank you, guys.